So what are you doing personally?
Most of the time I'm in the lab and trying to run a bunch of companies to make these drugs a reality. But daily, I try to keep a healthy weight. I do intermittent fasting, which is pretty easy because I'm so busy I forget to eat. So I'm a night eater. But that seemed to be good because a study came out about a couple of weeks ago, at least in mice, that it's not what you eat, it's when you eat that's most important for longevity. And that puts your body in a defensive mode. And these are the things that we've been studying in my lab for the last 20 years. What are the processes that diet and exercise do for us that keep us healthy? And why does calorie restriction and intermittent fasting make animals live so much longer? And we think we've figured out a large part of how that works, and now we're mimicking that with molecules.
Is the idea that you can mimic it with molecules and it'll be as effective as intermittent fasting?
Add them on to a healthy diet and exercise in the animals, they do even better. It's like a supercharged mouse. One of the first molecules infamous molecules that we are known for is resveratrol from red wine. That molecule, discovered it in my 30s, or at least linked it to aging. What we showed was that if you give it to a fat mouse, they're as healthy as a thin mouse. They live just as long. They didn't get heart disease and all of the other bad stuff. Then what we did was interesting. We gave it to the mice either every day in their food or let them skip a meal every day so that they were fed every other day. And that combination of resveratrol plus every other day feeding, we had the longest lifespan we'd ever seen. And it was additive. Same with exercise. If we give our latest molecule called NMN to a mouse and we exercise it, it'll run even further than it could with either of those alone. So it's not an excuse to sit around and just eat chips and watch TV. It augments a healthy lifestyle, gets you further than what you could get naturally. I eat healthy. I try to skip meals. I also take supplements. And in fact, most of my colleagues are in the field of aging, or anti-aging as people call it. So I take NMN every morning.
What is NMN?
Good question. So let me take a quick step back.
Sure.
So about 20 years ago, Lenny Guarente and a team of us at MIT discovered a set of genes that controls aging in yeast cells, just brewer's yeast, what you find in beer and bread. And those genes are called sirtuins, and there are 7 of them in our bodies, 5 in yeast. And what they do is they protect all organisms on the planet, plants, bacteria, humans, from deterioration and disease. They're like the Pentagon. They sense when we're hungry, sense when we're exercising, and they send out the troops to defend us. So when you put more of these genes into a yeast cell or a mouse, they'll live longer, between 5 to 20% longer. And so we think that these genes are responsible for the effects of dieting and exercise, which is great. What that means is we can now mimic that with molecules. So NMN is one of those molecules, so is resveratrol. You can think of resveratrol as the accelerator pedal for the sirtuin genes, and the NMN is the fuel. And without fuel, resveratrol won't work, so NMN is the gas in the car.
I've heard of resveratrol, but is NMN a new molecule? Is this commercially available?
Some people have started selling it on the internet.
The fucking internet.
It's related to NR, which is sold by a bunch of companies.
NR?
Yeah, nicotinamide riboside is a supplement that raises the levels of a molecule called NAD.
I feel like I should make a shopping list.
So get a pen. So while you're writing that down, Joe, so the sirtuins, okay, get this. So sirtuins need NAD to work. Without them, they don't work. In fact, if you don't have NAD in your body, you'd be dead in about 30 seconds. It's a really important molecule. But as we get older, we lose NAD. So by the time you're 50, like I almost am, you have about half the levels of what you had when you were 20. So that's not good. And these sirtuins, they don't protect the body without high levels of NAD. So what NMN does, and this other molecule called NR, which both you can get on the internet, they boost the body's levels of NAD back up to youthful levels again. And if we give them to mice, these molecules to mice or even to worms or yeast, they live longer and they're super healthy. So I take a gram of NMN in the morning. Based on clinical trials, it's been shown that will raise NAD.
With or without food?
Take another half a gram of resveratrol.
And how much? Half a gram?
Yeah. It's a powder. I have a few kilos left over from clinical trials in my basement. So yeah, that's going to last me a few decades. And then I also take at night some metformin, which is probably the most radical thing that I take, which is a prescribable drug for diabetes.
Prescribable drug? But you don't have diabetes?
I do not.
But you take it for?
For preventing cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and aging. And so out of studies of 10,000 people and more, it's been shown that people who take metformin, even if they have diabetes, are protected against other diseases of aging, even frailty. And so most scientists, if you ask them in my field, will say, yeah, metformin is likely to extend your lifespan. It's just that the FDA doesn't let you have it for aging because aging isn't a disease yet.
So do you have to get diabetes to get it, or do you have to get a sneaky doctor?
Well, I wouldn't call it a sneaky doctor, but the doctor typically has to be convinced because they don't keep up with the literature. And
Right.
it's off-label. I take 1 gram of that as well, which is about a low dose. Some diabetics take 2 grams, so it's not crazy amounts.
And what is the mechanism that metformin is operating under?
Okay. So this is the great thing, is that over the last 20 years, we scientists have figured out that there are universal regulators of aging, from yeast to worms to mice and in humans. And there are 3 main pathways that we figured out respond to what we eat and how we exercise. And one of them is called AMPK, and this is a target of metformin. And so when I take metformin, I'm activating my AMPK, which will send out the troops. The sirtuins I've mentioned, that's the second of the pathways. And so I take NMN and resveratrol for that. And then the third one is called mTOR, which is a pathway in the body that responds to how many amino acids, how much meat you're eating. And it will also protect the body if you tweak it just the right way. And there's only, besides eating low amounts of protein, the only way to affect that pathway is with a drug called rapamycin, which is a little dangerous to try and is used for immunosuppressants. So it's not something that I would recommend, and I don't take it. And that's really the trick, is to activate your body's defenses against aging. The old theories about aging, you got to throw them out. Most people at parties will tell you, antioxidants, free radicals, DNA damage, or mutations. That is all, for the most part, incorrect.
That antioxidants cause DNA damage?
No, that's true.
That it repairs DNA damage.
Well, antioxidants have been a rather big failure in the aging field.
But resveratrol is an antioxidant, correct?
It's a mild antioxidant, but it doesn't work by being an antioxidant.
Oh, what does it work? What is the pathway?
It steps on the accelerator pedal of these sirtuin enzymes.
Oh, okay.
And so it's directly controlling the body's defenses against aging.
So as we discussed it, or as people discussed it as an antioxidant, it was just a mild form of antioxidant, but it did so much more.
Right. And we know this because if you create a yeast cell or a worm or a mouse and then you knock out the gene for the sirtuin, now resveratrol doesn't help the animal anymore.
That's interesting, because when people talk about wine, that's the one thing they say, the resveratrol is an antioxidant. It's really good for you.
Yeah, this is one of those urban myths that never goes away and still fuels a billion-dollar industry. But what we're finding is that the molecules in plants, like resveratrol, first of all, that we think they're produced by plants because the plants are benefiting from the stress. We call it hormesis. A little bit of stress is good for you. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger, kind of thing. And hormesis was discovered about 60, 70 years ago when people were spraying herbicides on plants, and a little bit of herbicide actually made them stronger. And we think that these molecules in plants are similar. They make the plant stronger during times of stress. So if you stress a grape that's for wine making, you'll get great wine, but you'll also get a lot of resveratrol. And so when we ingest that resveratrol from the plants, we get the same health benefits because the plants are activating their sirtuin pathways, and we have the sirtuins, and they activate us as well.
Ah. Any specific type of protein? Do you limit your amount of protein?
Yeah. I enjoy eating mammals just as much as anybody, but I try to avoid them. There's this TMAO molecule that seems to cause heart disease.
TMAO.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how is it linked to heart disease?
It might be damaging the genome. That's my recollection. But the other problem with meat in general from animals is that there's a lot of amino acids in there, and it's easy to eat a lot of meat. And so if you have high levels of amino acids, it will activate this mTOR pathway, one of those 3 longevity pathways. And you don't want that.
You don't want that.
You don't want that because mTOR has evolved to sense times of adversity and stress and hunger.
So why do people see a performance benefit when they consume branched-chain amino acids?
Really good question. So in the short run, just like taking testosterone, it will give you performance benefits. But we think in the long run, it'll actually come back to bite you.
So how will branch chain amino acids come back to bite you?
So branched chain amino acids will activate this mTOR pathway. And when we do that in animals, we reduce their lifespan. So it's the opposite. You want to keep those levels low.
That's interesting. That seems, I mean, for a dummy like me, it seems counterintuitive because what's making you perform better currently, you would think, especially something like amino acids, a natural part of the human body, you would think that would be beneficial. You're adding to your body something that it needs.
Yeah, you would. But what you should consider is that it's a trade-off. And our bodies want to do one of two things. We either want to grow really fast and reproduce fast, build up a lot of muscle, cells divide. That's great in the short run. You'll be fertile, you can run, but actually that's at the expense of hunkering down and building a long-lasting body. And it's a trade-off over time. And so animals that grow fast and reproduce fast, like a mouse, will only have a short lifespan, whereas a whale that grows slowly and reproduces slowly will live a long time.
Interesting. So the idea is you're limiting your calories, you're limiting your carbohydrates, you're limiting your protein, you're limiting your amino acids, but you're ramping up on all these beneficial molecules.
Right, these pathways that have evolved since the beginning of life to make us live longer during adversity so we can thrive when times come back.